Good morning, good afternoon, loves. This is Belinda. I decided to pop on really quick. Today's Thursday, March 26th. Are you losing track of time? It feels like some days that I am to remember exactly what day it is. But I decided to pop on really quick because I want to talk to some of us. A lot of us are quarantined in, whether it's self quarantine or it's our job. And this is an excellent opportunity, as I mentioned the other day, to reflect about some things. The other day, if you go look at the video, we talked about, ladies and our beauty and our habits. And so I am up this morning. I am partly dressed, nice little purple top, my favorite color. But I want to talk to those who keep talking about writing a book. And so, we have this concept, I want to write a book. How do I go about it? And what many of us don't understand is there's times where, our words that are in our head are different than what comes out on the paper. And so, for a personal perspective, I am not only have I done poetry as a child, I've done some spoken words that I've written about that eventually they'll be back up on the website. When we branded, we took everything down. And I am also an academic writer, which means I am in right now my second master's program, um, working toward my license to become licensed, the graduate piece for marriage and family therapy. So I've done plenty of academic papers, and probably the lowest has ever been was a 70. My professor came at me, and the paper was crap. And I'll tell you why. Because my natural voice is very different than my academic voice. And if you've ever done a true academic paper, and I'm not just talking about business papers, it's so totally different, but from a scientific perspective, it is not that easy because you're incorporating other people's ideas, you're citing and so forth. So the lowest I ever had was, and it was actually my undergrad, was about a 70. And my professor tore me apart. She came to me. She said to me, she shared some things with me. She said she went to Facebook. She showed me this picture that I had seen when I was in the one of the museums down in DC. And she said, this is what I was doing. And so I was writing in first person, and I knew the paper was a mess. But she gave me about 14 points. Professors don't do that. She said, you broke every academic rule possible, but here we at academia, we appreciate when people break the rules. And she actually said to me, write the book and send her an autographed copy. And it's on my task or to-do list. It's just not right now. And the book was on the African American nuclear family from about the 1800s until now. And I found some awesome research. And so what I do is I also try to push those components because many of us who are African American do not understand our history. So we were only certain things we were told, and that's the narrative we believe. So think about that. Writing is about a narrative, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. But anyway, that was my natural. So now I've kind of got the hang of it. And my lowest paper probably is around maybe 85. I think a professor gave me recently, or close to a 90. And then I questioned that because she said to me, "Don't cite myself." And so I was debating, do I make a formal request against her, a formal documentation, because my mental mind was, was it biases, was it microaggressions, and would she say that to a white woman? Because the reality is, a lot of them don't expect me to write the way that I do, and I do not take credit. I know that the Lord has given me a gift, and so I like to share it with other people. So understand that sometimes your voice, you may need a ghostwriter. Your voice in your head is not the same voice that should go on paper. And some of us take a long time to express a point. I've seen, like, even looking at some of our posts, there's no narrative, there's no break. We start off speaking and we don't go back and correct it. And I will tell you from just from a personal perspective again, that there's days I'll go back, I'm like, oh my God, Belinda, you miss here or there, or you miss, you miss a spelling word. And so when I go back, I try to correct it. And because I keep all my content, that's a key now. All my content that I've put out on social media, I track it regularly the day that I posted it. I can go back to 2009 and tell you exactly what day something got posted. Those are part of my personal habits for my copyright. And I am legally copyrighted. It's not hard to do. You can go and research it. I think the price went up a little bit, but I copyrighted years ago. Understand that, and it's going to take longer now, that you will not get the certificate. But on all my sites, whether social media, my personal website, you will see the copyright sign and that I am the copyright holder. And that includes my papers as well, because I've shared those in different and various locations. But understand that you have to be able to be succinct when you're writing. Like, I have done blogs that were 700 words or less. That is no small feat, particularly if you like to talk. And so some of us, again, we may need a ghostwriter. And there are. I actually am a ghostwriter. My girl Maria, the same thing, that we take what you want to say and we put it down and we document it as a book. Most people, famous people, will have books out. They are not the original author, I promise you, because the average person doesn't write like that. But now is a perfect time for you to begin to write. Now, some of us need a more structure than others, whether you have an outline. Some people actually need that to get started, or you need something else. But now is the time. Like, I have to finish this book called Winter Hiatus. And before anybody tries to take the title, this is a perfect timing because many of us are quarantined, is the book began to generate itself back in August when I was in Hawaii, finished editing the prayer book, the remix, which we still have to launch. And so also understanding times to launch. This is what real authors do. Not just the self-publishing, but, Marie and I in conversations, exactly when are we going to launch the book? It has to be a certain time frame. It has to be a certain amount of pages. So I'm going to average around 80, maybe 85, 86 to fit a certain size. And I believe this time I'm going to do 6x9. But take all that into context, because you can actually load your stuff up on Amazon now. It's very different. Anybody can go in and load. Of course, you need a cover. Make sure your covers and stuff are proper. Some of us have some of our friends design things, and they're really trying to help us out, but they're not the best designer. Like, when people looked at the first cover of my book, or the Love Journey series, which is literally called the Love Journey series, and there's about 3 or 4 books underneath that I had a friend, Eldrina, my ex-fiance, his sister, did the design of my book, the cover. And when I went and took it to Maria, who's been in the industry over 30-something years, she could literally see the concept and the idea, but she also saw some shading that I couldn't see on my computer because, of course, she had all the professional equipment. And so I encourage you, surround yourself with people who know what they're doing. People come to me and ask me, and I will do so now, but also I have to charge you because I've been there. And it's not even about the amount of sales of books, but what's also in your content. So my very first book, or actually I published 2 books at the same time on my 48th birthday. Who would have ever imagined? Because I was writing content on Facebook. And because I'm so organized, I went back in and I pulled the content back in. And I created one book, which was poetry, and the other book was the prayer book for the women. Two different genres, which is not typical for most people, because many of us, whether we understand it, we can only stay in one vein. But if that's your vein, find it, work it, do what's necessary. And so in writing those 2 books, I published them. Then I went to do another book called Solomon the Modern Day Lover. And that is if you're familiar with the Bible, all the chapters of Solomon in the Bible, and I rewrote them, and took me less than 20 minutes. That's just the way my brain is wired. Someone said to me they had been studying that book for 2 years. And I couldn't tell them it only took me 20 minutes in between breaks. That's just the reality of it. There's other spoken words. There's a spoken word in the front of my prayer book that I got the thought process. Use your phone. You have an iPhone. I wrote the concept down, and I think I wrote that in about 20 minutes or so. And so it's the way, as you begin to write, you practice. The more you practice, the better that you get at this. And it's not an easy thing, but it also helps you because it's a part of journaling. Some of us have stories that other people need to hear. Like, I have not started my life story yet, and people are not necessarily going to like it. It's called Between God and the Struggle. And I've been struggling since I was about 9 years old to get some things done. And the enemy was coming for me at 9 to take me out because he knew that how many people I have to reach. And so there's been thousands upon thousands, and you're not always going to get the response that you're looking for. And I had to learn that a long time ago. It's about if one person can get through or one person can break through based upon a post or content. Many of us are just writing just to be writing. Just about every post that I do, the majority is to help someone understand. And people come to me later and say, it was right on point. So I don't look for the mass numbers. And because I learned, the Lord had given me years ago that you would reach the masses. And this was before social media. I was like, how am I going to do that? But I began to understand as I began to launch out. And when I was writing, I didn't even know I was branding myself. So of course my first brand was called Teaching Lessons Defining Moments, and yes, that's copyrighted. It's in, it's down in the government, but that's part of the concept that I am a scribe, and the things that I do, I write to give you information to help you with your daily life. Just like now for some of us, we're home. I suggest you get up, get dressed, shower, someday dress up. I probably have a couple Zoom meetings later for work today, but I encourage you to, you have plenty of time to reflect upon some things. You have plenty of time to talk about your story, plenty of time to write about your life. Some of us have been so traumatized that you need to write. Journaling kind of helps, get things. That is one method I will use that when I become a licensed therapist, to journal your story. And do you know that sometimes the journaling is not necessarily the real story? Because perception is what? In our mind, and perception is not always the correct reality. That's one thing I learned in my undergrad in psychology, that creating stories sometimes helps. Like when I go back to the time of my life that I was going through in my marriage, it was very abusive mentally, psychologically. I looked at the papers and I found something. It's like, Belinda, you were crazy. I've been called that. I'm really not. I'm sane. But just the level of the writing and how it was articulated is not where I am now. But it helps me to understand where I came from. And so isn't that what all writing is about? Is telling stories, writing books, and so forth. So this is your time. Use it wisely. Went to hiatus, as I said, will eventually come out. And that was tied into when I was in Hawaii and working on the other book. And the Lord just dropped it in my spirit that some of us die in our seasons. Don't die in the winter. And here we are now. Don't die during this quarantine. It is not comfortable, but make awesome use of it. I've been sharing with different people, because there's some people that I know that are quarantined or their children are sick, that God knew that this time was coming. And for those who may or may not believe in God, that's your choice. But I believe that he understood that in spite of all, quote unquote, the prophets and the preachers talking about 2020 vision, most of us didn't see this coming. But the question was, were we prepared? It won't be the last time. Understand that this is only a prerequisite to what's to come. And so it's a perfect time to reflect, take care of yourself. And I may pop on tomorrow to talk about some benefits of self-care. That's one of the first lessons that we're taught as we begin to, the second master's program that I'm working on now. The first master's was in business and nonprofits. So everything that I do is for the kingdom. So even now I encourage you. I'm praying for you. If you need a special prayer, inbox me on social media. You can find me on the platform. Everything is under Belinda E. Oliver. My website's under belindaeoliver.com. My Facebook is under Belinda E. Oliver. And then it's a 2 after it, because I try to keep my, part of my public and my private life a little bit separately. But I'm always willing to pray for you. So reach out. I encourage you. Spend some time. Start writing your book. You've got time. Many of you are working. You have the weekend. I have 30 days. I'm off break for school. I have literally less than 30 days before my next class starts in April to get some of this done. So I love you all. Praying for you. I encourage you. I'll speak to you soon. God bless. Bye-bye.